Nightside Project. Finish the day happy with Ethan Millard and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio.
Welcome on into the Nightside Project. Glad to have you with us here live from Park City and Sundance. Although, if you're downloading the podcast, it's definitely not live. Maybe it's 2 in the morning for you. Maybe you are seeing over the night sky a UFO on your own. And that's why we have Keith Arem here on the show here with us. And Keith, his film at Sundance is the Phoenix Incident. And phoenixincident.com is the website. And Keith, you got the background that you have is in gaming. You started developing games. And tell us about how you got onto that track. One of my neighbors is a game developer, and he's just like, works for a big studio here in Salt Lake, and just turns out video games. And he's just like, this is what I wanted to do all growing up. And we could do. Our generation can do that.
Yeah, it's great. I started as a kid playing video games, and but I was in music, and I went out to California and got my engineering degree, and I was working to get a record deal. And as a freshman in college, I got my first record deal.
Cool.
And my parents wouldn't let me drop out of school, so I had to stay. and so by the time I was a senior, I took a big record deal with Capitol Records, and I was with the band Biohazard, and then we became Contagion, and we used to actually come out to Salt Lake and headline at X96 was the big radio station out here.
Still is.
So and we were doing playing with 9 Inch Nails, all these other big bands, and the whole time we're on tour, we're playing video games in the back of our tour buses going from city to city, and everyone's like, your music's perfect for video games. How come you don't do these? And I was like, And so I got back into LA, and a friend of mine was working with Sony, and there's this new game system they were working on called the PlayStation. Yeah. And I was like, that sounds kind of cool.
Hold on, let me write this down.
Have you heard it?
I'm going to go look this up when I get home.
A couple people have these now.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was great. And so he ended up hooking me up, and I ended up doing the music to some early games. I did a game for the music for this game called Earthworm Jim, and a couple other games. And all of a sudden, I was getting calls left and right. I ended up getting hired at a company called Virgin Interactive. And
so then suddenly you're a video game music composer.
And that's what I was. And I was writing all this music, and within 6 months of working at the company, I ended up becoming their director of audio, built all the recording studios, started directing all the actors, doing all the sound, all the music. And Virgin was the number 2 publisher in the U.S. Behind EA. And after working there for almost 7 years, we were purchased by EA, and I became their audio director.
EA Sports. Yes. It's in the game.
That guy.
That guy.
Yeah. That's what I grew up. That's what I grew up listening to.
Yeah.
Oh, I can do his voice. You don't need to hire him. Whatever he's worth, I'll do it for a quarter of what he's doing it for.
And then I started my own company, and so I run PCB Productions in Los Angeles, and so now I've done close to 600 titles, probably more than that now, and now that's grown into VR and augmented reality.
That's some absolutely huge ones. He worked on Call of Duty, for example.
Yeah, 11 of the past Call of Duty games I've
directed. Which is phenomenal, because
just 11.
I will tell you this. So I was one of those guys that played. I was one of those guys that played video games as a kid, and then kind of outgrew it for a while, and then was reintroduced as an adult, and realized how far gaming had come in the 10 years that I had kind of, 10-ish years that I had set it aside. Yeah. And it was Halo that reintroduced me, but it was Call of Duty that really sunk its claws into me, and that's what made me a gaming hobbyist.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that game really changed it. And when I got involved with that game, it was really interesting. I came in at the end of Call of Duty 1 and started on Call of Duty 2, and predominantly working with the actors, structuring the recording sessions. I did a lot of stuff with motion capture and facial capture, and other games as a result of that. Ended up working on so many military-based games, but before that I was doing all the Tony Hawk games. Every time you work on a game, they're like, oh, you're the sports guy. You're the guy that does the Kelly Slater thing? Okay, you're the guy that does Tony Hawk thing?
So Tony Hawk, so let's dive into that for just 1 second.
All right.
Because I was one of those kids that was in high school in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
Which is when Tony Hawk, and then Tony Hawk 2, I think, was the one
that... first one I did.
Tony Hawk 2 was the one that really, really made my parents frustrated with me. if there's a Tony Hawk that really... But I remember, I was Bucky Lasik on everything, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And video game music is beyond iconic. It becomes something that you don't just hear it; it becomes part of your experience.
Right.
And you listen to it so often that there's songs that get stuck in your head, and then there are songs that become implanted in you because you have tried to land this trick for 4 hours now, and you can't do it.
You got that song,
and that song's still going. But I remember too being able to choose music and be able to switch it around.
Which
and that
platform
made it so
did
much
you have?
Different. It was the PlayStation.
Yeah, the PlayStation.
Yeah.
So the PlayStation could actually stream off the disc. The N64 actually had a little chip in
like
it.
An extra
and
cube.
we had to cut up all the music and loop it, and it was impossible to take all those songs, Jane's Addiction, and try to make a song out of it.
I might have had both platforms, but I remember because we had a 64 and a PlayStation. I was one of those kids. It was like, I got to have both. But you know what? It worked out because Tony Hawk. It was funny because PlayStation was like, you don't play Tony Hawk on Nintendo 64. You play it on PlayStation. So the music became part of that experience.
Yeah. Well, and putting that sound, they had a great licensed soundtrack, based on that. But the fact that I got to write music on that as well, my album probably sold a couple 100,000 records. That sold 15 million copies, right? Yeah. So, you're a multi-platinum artist. It's like, you're not getting credit for it. But it's fun to know that, there's a whole generation that kind of knew what you did. Yeah. And recording all those skateboard sounds, I spent months, every surface, everywhere, all over Los Angeles, recording just
grabbing the weirdest Foley ever. Yeah. Like going out and going,
That's
I got to get a good rail. I got to get a decent rail slide sound. I got to get I got to get the guy crashing, landing on his face.
Yeah. And we had these pro skaters, and what I did is I built a backpack rig with my sound recording gear, ran cables down, which was dangerous, and had these mics on the special board, and so we got every surface, and we went to skate parks, and we went down to Venice Beach, and everywhere, and it was great because I've done so many of the Tony Hawk games. A few years back, I just did Tony Hawk 11.
Oh, my goodness.
And so Tony came back in. I also directed all the live action stuff and the green screen and everything else, and my son at the time is probably 4 years old, and he comes in, and he's holding my original skateboard that I recorded all the Tony Hawk games with. Oh. And it's beat to crap. The thing is all weathered and there. And Tony grabs my son, and Tony's not a small guy.
Yeah.
He grabs my son, and we're rolling. He grabs Kyle, and he puts him on this skateboard and starts teaching him how to do an ollie right in the room.
My goodness.
And I'm like, roll the cameras. And so I've got this great footage of my son with Tony. And my son has no idea who Tony Hawk is. He's just thanks, skateboard dude. He thinks he's a cool guy. And he's looking at this board, and he goes, wow, this thing's in bad shape. A month later, this package comes to the house, not to me. It's addressed to my son. My son opens it up, and it's a brand new board autographed by Tony. And it's he's just the coolest guy, just the nicest.
I watched him. I watched this video with Tony Hawk this summer. I think when he landed it was like Tony Hawk lands his last, 1080 or something like that, and he brings his kid. His kid's like 20 now. And I remember when I was a kid, Vision Streetwear and Tony Hawk stuff was like everybody was wearing all that gear. And Tony Hawk was, before he probably even knew how big he was going to be, became Tony Hawk. And he's been Tony Hawk for 25 years probably, maybe even 30 of just that span of a dude that is the coolest thing. What a great experience. Keith, tell us again what your film is, where people can find it, and how they can get into voiceover work with the video industry.
Well, what's really interesting is so my film is The Phoenix Incident, and this is my first film. I never directed a film before. I've directed all these video games and done all these graphic novels and other things.
Sure.
And so I wanted to learn how to do film, and having not gone through film school, I wanted to surround myself with really good actors I could trust. And I've been fortunate enough to work with dozens, if not hundreds, of celebrities: Sam Worthington and Idris Elba, Gary Oldman, all these great actors.
Idris Elba was our vote for the next 007.
Oh yeah, he's the coolest guy. Idris is just the nicest, cool. He earns and owns everything he does.
Oh, that's cool.
But for a film this size, and Phoenix was a low budget film. It was $1.3 million, and we're trying to do this big alien abduction film. But so what I did was I went to the guys that I've been working with that I trusted the most for a decade, and this is all the top actors in video games. I got Troy Baker, who's from The Last of Us and from Call of Duty and Bioshock and all these other games. Travis Willingham, who's been in the Halo games. Yuri Lowenthal, who's been the Prince of Persia for half of those films.
Awesome.
Liam O'Brien, and then these guys from every other video game. Matt Mercer, Brian Bloom, everyone who's anyone in video games.
Yeah.
But no one knows what they look like, right? Yeah. So they're great actors, and for a film that is sort of this documentary thriller where we're trying to be realistic, I needed great performances with actors that just weren't facially recognizable.
Yeah.
Which kills you in international sales when you're at these film festivals and you're trying to sell it to
and they want to
someone
see Tom
in Germany.
Cruise.
But they know how to sell it because they have the chops already. They just have done it behind the scenes for their whole career.
And motion capture and everything else.
Yeah.
So this film features these guys, and they just tore it up. They did such a great job.
That's awesome.
And so what's interesting is that we use game techniques, these ways we record motion capture to do the film. We were bringing in the ways we distributed the film using Steam and other places. Now we're partnering with all these digital channels. Sure. So the game community is mixing now with the film community, and it's a great time.
Well, and what's amazing? What's interesting about that? What you're talking about right here is you're right. People don't recognize these actors, even their names, right? but they'll know their voices. Perhaps they'll recognize their voices. But these actors their performances have been viewed by a broader audience than many A-list film and TV stars.
Right.
Because you look at, for example, Call of Duty. I mean, there was a run there where every successive Call of Duty broke the record for historic media release.
Right.
Which means these guys are in front of an incredible number of eyeballs. Their performances are so widespread.
Yeah, but it's bad for kids, Ethan. It's bad for kids because only kids play it. And kids are stupid.
Do they have a sense of that? Do they have a sense of, hey, more people saw me in Call of Duty than saw Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible?
You want to see a box office release?
Right.
Well,
right.
So
what's
video
interesting
games,
is that there's been this round for the past 15, 20 years or more of stunt casting, of bringing in celebrities into video games. And there's this real question is that does a celebrity name sell more video games? But at the same time, there's a real kind of this effort right now going on, especially in Los Angeles and throughout the unions of the world, is that this idea of performance matters, and the idea that these performances really do affect people playing the games and doing that. And a lot of people, they see a celebrity's name on a box, and that's one thing for a film, and that definitely I know how that affects for foreign sales and international sales for films. But in games, if you think about like Nolan North in Uncharted, right, or Troy Baker in The Last of Us, or some of these actors that have really made the franchises there, it's almost these game actors are more important than the celebrities that are moving into that same area.
Yeah.
Because if you see one of my good friends who's a celebrity on these games, it's nice to see it, but it doesn't necessarily make the consumer go out and rush out and buy that game.
But
if they know that it's the guy from Uncharted, it's the guy from Call of Duty, then they're like, I love that, and I want more of that.
You know who would never miss him, though, is the fan group, though. Like the deep fans, they're like, oh, you know who that is, don't you? And you're like, I have no idea, no. And it's like, dude, it's the same thing happens in the cartoon world.
Right. And Japanese anime, too.
And you have these voice actors that have been doing a cajillion films forever, and people know exactly who they are. If they're in that, they know exactly who they are. So, this is a fun thing for us.
It's been amazing.
Keith Arem, his project is the Phoenix Incident. PhoenixIncident.com is the website. You can see. I'm assuming you've got I think that's where I saw the trailer.
They've got the trailer, and then you'll want to keep your eyes peeled there at Phoenix Incident for your upcoming marketing.
And Apple TV, I think you guys just said you're going to be able to release.
So we're going to be doing a full interactive version with all this 4 hours of content that's going to be for the interactive iOS version. So you're going to see that on all the Apple platforms, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
My son's going to flip out over that. He deep dives. Big time.
And for people in the gaming audience, I mean, it's interesting because we definitely have the UFO audience because of the thriller, horror, found footage nature of it. We get that part of the audience, and the gaming audience has really been embracing this because we all come from this world, and this is kind of our first effort into the major motion picture market.
Let me ask you this: first-time filmmaker here at the festival.
Yeah.
What's that been like? Have you been like open arms welcome, or is it because getting in, I've been on the other side of putting stuff into the festival and then being like, and then getting something in over at Slam Dance, instead, or whatever, going to other film festivals because it's so competitive. It's amazing to get into Sundance, and then have you been well received here? Like trying to get people to understand what your project is and things.
Well, because we didn't premiere here, so now what's happening is that we're using Sundance as this opportunity to bridge the film and the interactive side. So you see this huge VR presence, right? You see the guys from Jaunt, you see the guys from Oculus, you see HTC Vive, and the way we shot this film was very much like a VR film. So now what's been happening is that I'm making this move into designing and creating these interactive experiences using VR systems as well.
Sure.
So from that side, I'm now finding this entire new side of my career, and Sundance has been fantastic because you're getting producers and financiers and people who are welcoming that.
Sure.
So as much as the festival is going on, and I think it's an amazing festival for filmmakers and to be able to showcase that, we're having more success just by the pure networking of meeting amazing people
great.
here.
And because you have that advantage that not a lot of the films here do. A lot of them they encourage them not to release, right? I mean, they're encouraged not to release, and that's a good thing that you guys have already had some theatrical release and then be able to make it into the festival. That's a pretty cool thing.
And that's great. And so now we can do all these private screenings and do things. And so it's very entrepreneurial as a filmmaker, because I've done maybe 20 film festivals this year, and we're continuing to do several more, and we've won many of them this year for Best of Fest.
Awesome.
And for this little film that cost just over $1 million, people are saying, well, how did you get out there? How did you get a 200 city launch with Fathom Events, and how did you do this thing with Fandango? And we're like, just go out there and do it.
Just did it.
And so these other filmmakers are now coming to us and saying, hey, we want to get more involved in distributing our films, and this platform that we're about to release, I think, is going to open up a whole new wave of distribution for independent filmmakers.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I agree. Yeah.
Keith Arem, he's our guest up here at Sundance, our very first one of the evening, and we're glad to have him. Hey, all the episodes brought to you by Zoom. Everything for Android. They have the new location. We've got streaming here behind us. This box, the Zoom box, is interesting because it works on the Android platform. It is in. You thought that your streaming box was pretty cool. This one streams. It's the 4K for everything. You can get everything on that platform with that, and so we appreciate them jumping on board,
including gaming,
including all the games. Yeah. So we're glad to have you, Keith. Thanks for being with us today, man.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for having me. It's fantastic.
This is great. We're going to take our break here. We'll come back, of course, with more episodes here from Sundance, right here at the Producers Lounge, just off of Main Street. So for Ethan Millard, I'm Alex Kirry. Again, thanks to Keith Arem, our guest. We will come right back. More to go.